So we'll continue the audio resume, I guess. It's been a while since I've told some work stories. As I mentioned, I worked at the country club. I moved, worked at the gas stations, worked as a canvasser. As a canvasser, I got really good at taking rejection because you get 1 in 5 houses willing to stand there for the 3 minutes it took to fill out the form. And so, like I said, I got real good at rejection. But could cut it as an appointment setter. Left that job under, I mean, I guess essentially you could call it firing, but I couldn't do my job, so I don't. I was just a drain on their payroll. And so I completely, and I mean, zero surprise, zero anger about it. But, as I mentioned, at this point I was no longer living with mommy, and I was no longer living with dad, and it was just my brother and I living together. We'd moved out on our own, and his girlfriend, the woman who would eventually become his ex-wife, moved in with us as well. But I had to get a job, and I didn't have a car, so my job had to be close. About a mile away, this Sambo's restaurant had closed down. For those of you who don't remember Sambo's, it's got quite the history. Sambo's was, it got shut down in the 70s because they considered it racist. They considered Sambo's to be a racist term. It didn't help that on the inside of every Sambo's they had decorations. And I remember this because this is in the neighborhood I grew up in. And we went here a couple times when I was a child. And now it's, 1,000 years or 20 years later, realistically. Maybe 18, but you know what I mean. And Sambo's is shut down. They bankrupted in 1981, I think. And this new place was opening. They had completely done a remodel on it. It wasn't quite a ground up. They took the existing building, which was a restaurant, obviously, and put in a new restaurant, one that I will call the Square. And I mean, I call it that because that's what I always called it. It wasn't its formal name. It wasn't the name on the paycheck I got. The paycheck I got. I'd work 36 hours a week, 2 weeks in a row, and get a check for $131. Fortunately, I was a waiter. And so I, in theory, could get my money from the tables, right? I mean, that's what all the management told you. If you want to earn more money, go earn it. It's out there on the tables. Man, we're going into the Wayback Machine. I'm going to be talking above, I think, everybody's head here. The Square was in the Gemco parking lot. Gemco was a club store back in the day. It was a $1 buy-in, and then they gave you this little card that you had to flash at the ladies at the counter there, which was essentially the returns counter, when you walked in. And you could flash them anything with a blue dot on it, and they'd think you were a member. They never looked. They just waved and said thank you, and then you walked in and bought what you wanted. Gemco got purchased by Target. Target. Or at least the building did. Gemco went out of business. The building got purchased by Target, and I just spent a little bit of time on one of those map apps that the internet is famous for, and took a stroll around the neighborhood, so to speak. That Target has now been replaced with Wally's World. I guess none of this really matters, and I am just kind of rambling. Let me get to the square. So it was, as I said, a new restaurant. It wasn't a new building, but they'd put a new restaurant into it, and they had a sign up saying now hiring. And so I stopped in there one day with my pencil or my pen, because you never go to an interview without a pen. That's like saying, hi, I'm actually don't want this job, and was willing to do whatever. I'm not afraid of a kitchen, although I have no professional cooking experience. But they said they needed wait staff. And I figured with the previous job I had that I could walk around inside. I mean, because the previous job I had was walking around neighborhoods all day, right? So I figured I could walk around the inside of a building all day. No big deal. And as far as I knew, being a waiter, all you had to do really was take a person's order and then bring it to them. And I guess if you look at it from 3,000 miles up, that's all you really need to do. But if you've ever waited tables, there's a lot more involved in it. And if you ever wanted a raise or to make more money, like I'd mentioned before, you had to have a personality. I will tell you the personality that I have, or I should say, the personality that's recording these videos was in part greatly developed at Baker Square. It was somewhat developed as canvassing. That's when I learned to talk to people and just walk away from a no without getting pissed off. But that was 3 minutes on and then walk to the next house, which could be 3, depending on the neighborhood. Could be a minute or 3 or 5, depending, like I said, on the neighborhood. So it was just sporadic. And then I started working at the square, and I realized that quiet, shy, bookish people did not get tipped. Yes sir, no sir was not enough, and that I needed a personality. So I had developed over a very short period of time a very outgoing personality, and my tips got better. So let's see. Had a job as a waiter. It was a brand new restaurant, as I said. That means we got corporate training. That means we sat for a week before the restaurant opened and went through the menu. We looked at pictures of what the chicken fajita dinner looked like, and everything, right? Had to learn the menu. And in truth, and when I say learn the menu, I mean you needed to know what came with fries or coleslaw, what came with super salad, what the soups were, depending on the day. Just a whole bunch of just secondary stuff. And to be honest with you, I couldn't tell you that the chopped beefsteak skillet came with baked potato or French fries and soup or salad. Oh, excuse me. Baked potatoes, rice pilaf, or French fries and soup or salad. But I knew where on the menu it was when they pointed to it. I knew that area had the bakes after 4. It was a good job. I got my corporate training. I developed my personality. I still had the girlfriend that I had from when I worked at the gas station on the hill. She was still coming around, but she was also headed off to college soon, someplace back east. And I remember where it is, but it doesn't matter. The day she left or the last day I saw her before she left for college was the last day I saw her. I gave her a call when she came back for, I think it was Christmas vacation or something like that, and said, "Hey, what's up?" I'd been sending her letters and cassette tapes, um, and of my voice, me just talking, because I preferred that over Chico. Figure I prefer talking over writing. And then I called her, because back then we had to remember people's phone numbers because there were no such thing as cell phones. Or there were, but they were so god-awful expensive that you needed to be a senior sales rep at UPS or FedEx to have one, or something like that. Anyway, last time I talked to her, I'd called her when she'd come home and asked her what she was doing. She said, "I'm busy. I'm hanging out with my real friends." And I got the hint. Broke my heart. And then suddenly I realized that it was, as far as the wait staff went, it was me and 17 females on the floor. And I learned how to flirt, which is not a skill I had ever had before. About this same time, my brother and his future ex-wife moved out, and I'm suddenly in a place that I can't afford by myself, in a 3-bedroom place that I can't afford by myself. So I asked, no, I guess there were 2 of us males there, because Ramon was there too at that time. So I asked, I guess, Ramon, and he said he and the one of the cook staff were looking for a place, and I sold him on mine and told him that his third of the rent would be $250, and so would the other guys, so would Dave's, and they agreed that was enough. And Dave was the first gay man that I ever really interacted with. As we were sitting there talking one day when we were talking about moving he and Ramon into the new place, and Dave was very effeminate. And Dave looks at me and he says, "I'm gay, right?" Except for he said it with the typical lisp. And I looked at him and I said, "Yeah, I'm not, right?" And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "Then I don't see a problem." AIDS was already a thing. I wasn't worried about it. I knew how it was transmissible and how it wasn't. Living with a gay man was not going to get me AIDS. He was a very clean individual anyway, up until the end. I may or may not talk about the end for him. It's not really my story to tell. But now I'm officially a big boy, right? I have my own place. I have roommates. I'm living with people I have no relationship to. And if I want to eat and have a roof over my head, I'm responsible for that. I'm not living at Dad's anymore. I'm not living at Mom's anymore. I'm not living with my brother, who always had a secondary income, even when he wasn't working full-time. And I'm not going to get into what it was, but he always had a secondary income. Generally, that made as much, or if not more, than his primary income. All he'd have to do is drive for about an hour. So I got Ramon and Dave, and I realized that if I wanted to keep smoking as much pot as I wanted, and I wanted to smoke a lot of pot, and this is way back when that was still very illegal, I want to say 85, 86, I decided I needed a second job. So just at the other end of the parking lot where the square was a 24-hour gas station with the little fishbowl setup. And you probably don't know what I mean by that. But again, back in the day, you had, a row of pumps on each side, and then you had this little concrete, or brick, in my case, building with inch-thick bulletproof glass that one person sat in for 8 hours and took people's money. The difference was this was finally a prepay place, so they had to come to me first, and give me money, and then I would authorize that on the pump, and then they would go put that much money in their tank. It was the shift I had was the graveyard shift. It was from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. So I always got some interesting clientele, including people who really needed to get to blah 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 and didn't have any cash, and what could I do for them, right? And I'm working 5 days a week at the Square and 4 days a week at the gas station, and so I wasn't rolling in it because I was I mean the gas station job was to pay for my freaking drugs, and the so was the restaurant job, and then pull out whatever money I needed to pull out for bills. Food wasn't a real concern because I worked at a restaurant. I get half price meals there. So I really only had to worry about my food 2 days a week. At the Square, I met the woman who would eventually become my ex-wife, and we'd work all night together at the Square, and then I'd go to my job at the gas station, which I said was just right at the other end of the parking lot. So there was on foot, maybe it was a 4-minute commute. It was pretty good. A lot of long hours, but I was in my 20s, so it was fine. I had the energy. Ramon announced one day that he was going off to Europe for 3 months. I don't know or really care where he went. Ramon was of the opinion that while he was gone in Europe, he didn't need to pay rent. I was of a different opinion. So instead of paying rent for a place he wasn't living for 3 months, he took all of his stuff and put it in storage for 3 months and found a different place to live when he came back. So I had to start looking for roommates again. And at this point, at this point, things started to get a little blurry in my life. I will tell this one quick story about Ramon. I was, the water bill, I think it was in his name. And so the water bill would come in each month, and I would give Dave half of what the water bill was and walk away, right? And then Ramon gets back and says, "Oh my God, my credit score is horrible. Nobody's paid the water bill for the last 3 months, and now I'm in collections, and it's like $50 or something like that, $30, something like that. I don't remember." And I'm looking at him going, "Dude, I paid Dave. Go find Dave." Dave had yeah, I guess Dave had moved out by then too, huh? Like I said, it's all real blurry, but he must have. And Ramon's reply was, "I don't know where Dave is. I know where you are." And he took me to small claims court over $36, something like that. I explained to the judge that I had paid my half to the roommate, and the roommate hadn't paid the municipality, and the judge explained to me that it didn't freaking matter, and that I owed Ramon the $36. No, it had to be years later, because I was already in. Okay. I wonder when he came back to me with that. I guess the timeline on this doesn't matter. Maybe Dave hadn't moved out yet. Wow, that was a rabbit hole that led right into a granite wall, wasn't it? No, because I remember how I paid Ramon, and I remember where I was when I counted the pennies, and it wasn't at that place; it was at the new place. Worked 9 days a week for probably a year. I had the restaurant job for essentially 10 years, although technically it was 4 years, 10 months. Trust me, if you've ever been a waiter in a restaurant, that's close enough to 5 years to call it that. Um, Once I got kicked in the pants enough by management, I realized that I had to have, like I said, this personality. I also realized that I had to take charge of things, that things were not, because I was like one of the last originally corporate trained people there after a year. Um, and so they made me a service trainer, which meant when new staff would come in, impressionable young pretty girls would come in, they would have to shadow me for 3 days or a week or however long I thought I'd keep hold of them. And I would teach them how to wait tables and the menu and all the other little ins and outs of working in this particular restaurant during this particular era. And like I said, I'd learned how to flirt. I used to be skinny then. Of course, I'd just come off being a cocaine addict, so I'm sure that had something to do with it too. So Ramon moved out. Dave lived there for a while. I think that's when Jeff moved in. Then eventually Dave moved out and to Monster moved in. And then really at everything. I got fired from the gas station job. This is a great story. So my manager comes in one Friday morning or whatever and says, dude, I got a report that you were smoking pot in here last Wednesday night. And I looked him straight in the eye. I said, that's impossible. I didn't have any pot last Wednesday night. I said, Tuesday and Thursday I was fine, but Wednesday I was out. It was a shit night. And he looked at me and said, you're fired. And I said, yeah, whatever. I had a full-time girlfriend now. And I was actually smoking less pot because I had somebody who didn't mind me stoned but liked me better sober, is the way she phrased it. And I was motivated to make her happy. I would say during the period of my life up till now, from the country club through this period, I was smoking as much pot as I could inhale. Right? My, especially when I was living on my own and making all my own bills, I wasn't banking anything, but I was making all my own bills, and then I was spending the rest on pot. I would typically load up a hit in my bong the night before, and then before my feet hit the floor, I would go ahead and take it. That stopped when I started hanging out with this girl. I was still smoking a lot, but it wasn't as much as I could, and eventually that waxed away to I'll get there. Got fired from the gas station, started taking in more roommates. Like I said, I think there was Jeff, there was the black guy who was a cook, a breakfast cook at the Square, whose name I don't remember, and his buddy, whose name I don't remember. There was Monster, which no, was not his real name, but it's what we ended up calling him. And then there was another girl named Melissa, or perhaps Missy, I don't remember. She was interesting. She was a sociopath, I believe is the correct term. She had no real feelings for anybody else and would be happy to tell you whatever it was you wanted to hear. So much drugs during this period of my life. Even though I had cut down, I was still, and Jeff had a friend who, Jeff had a girlfriend whose husband lived up in the mountains and was affiliated with a group of gentlemen who liked to roll around on 2 tires instead of 4. If you're familiar with the phrase 1%ers, then you know what I'm talking about. And he was their cook, if you understand what I mean. And so Jeff's friend would buy from him pure, and then walk around on it a little bit, and that's how she made money. She was also a waitress. So much drugs. Remember, we would go bowling I think it was Monday night. And not bowling like, Kenneth and I did. Not where we'd walk down the street and duck behind a building and smoke a bowl. This was actually with the ball and the pins and the wood floors and the gates that go up and down the whole 9 yards. And drinks. So many toxic people. Eventually, the girlfriend and I moved out together. Oh my God, this went long. Eventually, everybody else, because of the toxicity and the drugs and just the nature of that kind of situation, everybody just kind of went into the wind. And I didn't pay rent for a month, and during that month, she and I found a new place to live. I think that's where I'll stop here, although that's only like halfway through my time at the square. Anyway, I see I'm well over 31 minutes. I am going to edit this. Hopefully I can get it down below that. But even if I can't, thanks for hanging out with me. Hope you enjoyed the stories. Stay blessed.
Till the day you come back, so don't forget just what you are. Yeah, I'm keeping your poop in a jar. Oh.